With just about a third of the season complete, it is in fact time to start really thinking about trade possibilities. So we're going to get to a lot of trade questions and also Luis González, Jakob Junis, and much more on today's Mailbag edition of the show.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, and I'm a lifelong fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com and tell them Locked On sent you. And coming up on today's show, we are going to dip into some mailbag questions. My goodness, you guys submitted so many questions, and I really appreciate it as always, truly, because these are great shows, and I think they get a lot of attention, and they wouldn't be possible without you, so thank you. A lot of questions about trades, and we're going to jump into that question first. Anime Consumerism says, what will likely be the Giants' trading plan going forward? Will it be trading for significant contributors on the major league level, or just waiting and doing a few small moves here and there? And then Ricky Clark says, who do you see the Giants acquiring outside of potentially Willson Contreras? And then Sandstorm721 says, catcher, I would rather overpay in prospects for Sean Murphy and his 3+ years of control than send a couple top 20 prospects for a playoff push with Willson Contreras. Agree or disagree? Depends on who is included, I assume. So there were even more questions about trades, but those were the three I'm going to focus on. In terms of the Giants' trading plan going forward, I just think it's like time to start thinking about trades, and then things will adjust as needed, because we are still a couple of months basically away from the trading deadline, which is at the end of July. I think it may have been pushed to like early August, maybe August 1st this year, but it's still not until at least the end of July. So we are a ways away, and things can change between now and then, and needs can become more clear. There could be unfortunately a significant injury that could change the equation. The Giants starting pitching could really stabilize, and then you don't feel like that's really a need anymore. The bullpen could get better. Certain guys could break through in the bullpen and establish themselves. So it's hard to say like for sure what the plan would be, but something I just wanted to mention this question triggered in me was that Farhan Zaidi has a track record wherever he's gone of being aggressive with major trades at the trade deadline, often for rental players. I think there's usually pretty good value you can getting good players for relatively cheap because you're only getting them for a couple of months. And we saw that last year with Kris Bryant. And when Zaidi was with the Dodgers, of course, he wasn't the number one in command. But look, be honest, he was a huge part of those conversations to acquire the players that the Dodgers acquired. And I'm talking about Manny Machado, the year that Corey Seager had to have Tommy John surgery and they didn't have him, and they were making a playoff push and they didn't really have a shortstop, and they went out and got the best player available in Manny Machado. I think it was the year before that they went out and got Yu Darvish for a playoff push, and he was the best starting pitcher available. And then when he was with the A's, I think that he was on those A's teams that made some major moves, like when they traded for John Lester. I think they gave up Yoenis Cespedes, and that ended up being like a move that sent that team into a tailspin. And then they went out and got Adam Dunn to fill that void in the middle of the lineup that was felt with the loss of Cespedes. They also got Jeff Samardzija, right? So they, with Zaidi there, and then like I said, last year with Kris Bryant. And so I would just, you look for kind of the area of that's the biggest need. And right now the position that kind of stands out to me is catcher. simply because, I mean, Kurt Casale has done a really nice job, but obviously, I mean, I don't need to say this anymore. It's been a struggle for Joey Bart. And I said a few weeks ago, I've been saying all along, like, if the strikeout rate continues to be 45%, which is where it's been pretty much all season, then these other numbers, it's hard to sustain them. So you're not going to walk generally so much if you're striking out that much, because guys know they can just attack the zone and you're going to swing and miss. I don't know. That position stands out, especially because like Bart is an optionable player. So you don't have to put up with this if you can have an upgrade. And like Contreras and Casale there's just no doubt it's an upgrade, a big upgrade at that position. But that being said, bringing in a catcher in the middle of the season is no easy task. They have to like learn your pitchers, and Contreras isn't actually a great framer, but he is a good thrower. But for me, and now I'm going to tie this in with the question about Sean Murphy, who's another catcher with the A's, 3 years of club control, versus Contreras. I mean, the issue for me is that, number one, Murphy's just not playing all that well. And so he doesn't really stand out as a guy I'm going to overextend and give up some really good prospects to go out and get, when I'm not so sure that I'd rather have him over Joey Bart at the moment. They're both kind of struggling younger players. I'd have to do more of a deep dive on Murphy, but just the surface numbers, I mean, are not very good. And he is a good defensive player and a great framer from what I understand, but I think Joey Bart has done a pretty darn nice job as a defensive player this year as well. Not so much with like throwing guys out, but leading the staff, calling pitches, blocking pitches. I think he's done a pretty darn nice job. So I would personally rather have Willson Contreras. Like I've said 1,000 times, the dude isn't just a good hitting catcher. He's a good hitter, period. My goodness. He's got a 402 weighted on base average. He's got a 401 on base percentage, a 239 isolated power, 158 weighted runs created plus. He's a dangerous bat in the middle of the lineup. And for me, it's like the closest you're going to get to like replacing what Buster Posey brought to the team. I'm not saying he's Buster Posey, but he is hitting like Buster Posey hit last year, essentially. And that was a huge boon to the Giants going on this magical run. And so Contreras will probably be dealt. The Cubs are, I mean, he's entering the last year of his deal. The Cubs are 9 games under 500. He's probably getting dealt. And to me, the Giants make as much sense as any team. And part of the reason, I think that he's a guy that you target and try to extend. He's not a guy like Bryant. I didn't really see them bringing him back. I think for Contreras, he could kind of solve that catcher position. And you've got optionable players like Bart and now Papierski that you can kind of rotate through that spot and hope that they can develop. It would definitely like crush Bart, but I don't know, maybe he's a part of a trade. So look, I don't know. And then, so that's just my stance on that. And then look, you could always use starting pitching. You could always use relief help. And I think that right now, bullpen is probably another area where they could certainly afford to make a move. There's so many relievers who are going to be available. It's hard to say exactly who jumps off the page, and at some point we'll look at that. But yeah, pitching and then obvious positions of need on the diamond, I think for me, catcher is what stands out. So obviously, like I said, things can change. You could need an outfielder. You could need an infielder. Depends on health, LaMonte Wade, Brandon Belt. But these guys are coming back, and if they come back and are stable, then it changes the equation. So anyway, coming up next, we're going to talk about Luis González. There are a few questions about him. What happens to Gonzalez? Do they send him down again when Steven Duggar is healthy and Duggar is getting closer? So we'll get to that in just a second. But first, this episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure the often pointless and seemingly intimidating questioning? Is your Odyssey an LX or an EX? What if you don't know? Embarrassing. And wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, slowly choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry. You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. So why choose to spend more, 30, 50, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership when you can just figure out what the part is you need, look it up on rockauto.com, see how much cheaper it is, buy it yourself, and then have whoever you want, even the dealership, install it. It is an absolute no-brainer. It's something I've been doing for many years myself. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need, rockauto.com. All right, as promised, we're going to continue dipping into some mailbag questions. There's just no chance I'm going to get to nearly as many as I want to, but as always, I'm going to save them. And for the next round, the next mailbag we do, I'm going to dip into some more of these questions. Before we move on, we have an important favor to ask of you. We've put together a survey so we can learn more about listeners like you and make your favorite Locked On podcasts even better. This is your opportunity to tell us what you like and don't like about Locked On Podcasts. Go to lockedonpodcasts.com/survey right now to get started. It won't take very long, and everyone that completes a survey can qualify for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Ticketmaster gift cards. To take our audience survey, go to lockedonpodcasts.com/survey. Thanks for your help. So yeah, moving on, 3 questions about Luis González. The first question from Crumbs, who says, is Luis González our lone all-star selection? No. We'll talk about why. Wim Lincecum, has Luis González taken away Steven Duggar's roster spot? Jacob Marquez, what's going to happen when Duggar returns to full health? Does Gonzalez go down? Would this provoke a trade of sorts? Farhan recently said in an interview he likes it when rookies perform so well, which then puts pressure on the front office to make these decisions. Yeah, he better like. I mean, that's the ultimate, right? These are good problems to have when we're talking about they have to send him down because they've got too many quality players on the Major League roster. It's a great problem to have, even though it riles up the fan base at times. But for the first question, is he our lone all-star selection? No, I mean, it's not even close. He's not, to me, an all-star because, I mean, first of all, the numbers are just like continuing to fall down. I'm not trying to be too pessimistic about Luis González, but there's a lot of unsustainability to what he's done. Something to notice, there's not a big gap between the average and the on base. So he's not really walking. Walk rate is 5.6%. So as the average continues to fall with the average on balls in play, you're going to see the on base percentage get to potentially a scary low number. And then he's not hitting for a ton of power. And one of his 2 home runs came against a position player. So we kind of probably shouldn't even count that. So he's still got more to do to prove to me that he's like a guy who's like a no-brainer must-have on the roster at all costs guy. He's done great and rookie of the month, and I give him a lot of credit, but I'm just saying the numbers haven't stabilized. So I haven't seen the full picture yet. I need to see more. And also defensively, he hasn't been the best defender. So, I mean, Mike Yastrzemski has been the Giants' best player. He's got a 384 on base, 463 slugging, all-around player. I should say Jock Peterson also, to me, I think if the All-Star game was now, you probably would see Jock Peterson there as well, and deservedly so. He has been a difference maker with the bat, and he would deserve to be there. But to me, those would probably be the only 2 guys who would be up for serious consideration. On the pitching side, I mean, at first, Carlos Rodon looked like a no-brainer, but starting with, was it that game in St. Louis when he just got lit up on Sunday Night Baseball? It just has been kind of a struggle ever since, but there's still like underlying numbers that say that he still could be a dominant guy. We haven't seen as much swing and miss lately, but he pitches tonight, and I thought he was better in his last outing. So Rodon and Webb are going to, for me, continue to be in the conversation, and we're still a month away or so, and they could push themselves onto that team with a strong month, in my opinion. But I think saying that González is their lone all-star is a bit of a stretch on what González has done, and maybe overly focusing on batting average, which batting average is by far not the most important offensive number to look at. I think like weighted on base average, weighted runs created plus. These are more valuable numbers. So anyway, has he taken away Steven Duggar's roster spot? It's interesting because they kind of do different things. Duggar is a defensive first player. He hit some last year, and that's what made him so valuable. He's also a good base runner, fast. So they're different. They don't really do the same thing on the roster. But as of now, if Steven Duggar was ready to be activated, I don't think you send down Luis González just to call up Steven Duggar. I think you let Gonzalez continue to, like I said, there's more, I need to see more, and you kind of let him play out that more, and you can option Steven Duggar. Steven Duggar is one of these guys who has 4 options. Normally players only have 3. I don't quite understand how that happened, but he can be optioned. So that's the thing. Gonzalez and Duggar can be optioned. And right now, I don't think you just send Gonzalez down to bring up Duggar. I think Duggar would be optioned. But it's nice to have that flexibility with both of them, because if Gonzalez goes into a deep rut and Duggar's tearing it up in AAA, then you call him up and you send Gonzalez down, and vice versa. If Duggar struggles and Gonzalez is tearing it up, you can call him up. So it's actually a good position to be in. But I don't think it would provoke a trade, Jakob, because they can be optioned. If neither could be optioned and there's not enough room, then yeah, but they both can be optioned. So the next round of questions is about Jakob Junis. Steven asks, we're going to save these questions actually for just a minute. We're going to talk about if Junis's roster spot is safe with impending returns for Anthony DeSclafani and Matthew Boyd, both of whom are supposed to be members of the starting rotation, but what if there isn't really room? So we'll get to that in just a second. But first, don't you love a chewy, chocolatey brownie? Who doesn't? What about a caramel brownie with caramel swirled on top? So good. What if I told you can have all that chewy, chocolatey deliciousness plus 17 grams of protein and not very many grams of sugar? These are better than dessert, plus the macros are unreal, like I said. 130 calories, 17 grams of protein, and only 4 grams of sugar. I would replace that regular brownie with Built's caramel brownie bar in a heartbeat. It is an absolute no-brainer. Just look at the sugar content in a typical brownie. So go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15, and you can get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, as promised, we're going to talk about Jakob Junis and hopefully some more questions as well, including what are the top reasons the Giants are losing the games that they're losing? I hope to get to that question as well. Steven asks, has Jakob Junis earned a roster spot in the eyes of decision makers when everyone is healthy? Any idea what the plan is for Matt Boyd? David says, is it too early to assume Jakob Junis is the real deal and the Game 3 starter in an SF Giants playoff series? So let's start with that one. Yes, it's too early to assume that. I don't think that, first of all, right, they don't have to make that decision until then, and that's a good thing because performance varies. And as good as Jakob Junis has been with the 2.51 ERA, every single peripheral base number, and peripherals are like strikeouts, walks, home runs, things like that, suggests an ERA more in the mid to high 3s versus the mid 2s. And so I would kind of lean towards that's where he's going to trend to moving forward, is not so much an elite ERA, but more of a good, solid one. And it's definitely too early to assume because they've got guys like DeSclafani and Boyd on the way back, and we just don't know what the second half of the year, and really, we're not even a third of the way through the season, so we have 2/3 plus of the season to play, so a lot can happen. So yeah, it's way too early to assume that. I think that's probably overrating him a little bit. He's been great. It's kind of like a Luis González situation. I just need to see more, but the performance has been good, and he definitely for now deserves to be in there. But it would be, I do not know, I've answered this question before, what they are going to do. Like, let's say that tomorrow DeSclafani and Boyd, a lot of you probably are like, who's Boyd? They signed Matthew Boyd to a $5 point something million 1-year deal this offseason with the intention of having him as a part of this starting rotation and coming back in June. He's coming off of some kind of surgery. I think it was like a forearm surgery. I don't believe it was Tommy John, but he is supposed to be in this starting rotation mix, and he's getting closer to being ready. And DeSclafani, same thing. Both of them could be ready at some point in the month of June. And so the question as to what do you do with Junis if you've got Rodon, Webb, Wood, Cobb, Junis, Boyd, and DeSclafani? That's 7 starting pitchers. What if they're all healthy at the same time? Answer, I have no idea. I have no idea what they would do. I can't tell you. I think that the thing is, it becomes an options game again. And so as much as people would be very upset about this, Jakob Junis has an option. And so they could use it. They might use it if it would be a bad look. It would definitely be a bad look to send down a guy who's been pitching well in favor of guys who just haven't proven anything this year. I mean, DeSclafani, though, was Jakob Junis last year. He was very effective. He did have a 2-something ERA for the whole season, even though the peripherals were higher. So, I mean, look, they signed DeSclafani to a 3-year deal. I don't think they're just going to give up on him after one bad month when he was injured in year 1 of this new 3-year deal they gave him. So DeSclafani, they're going to give him that opportunity. Junis could move to the bullpen. I think that there's definitely guys who could be sent down. Other guys in the bullpen have options, and you might just consider sending somebody down and having Junis in the bullpen and pitching a significant role, like when a starter has to come out kind of early due to pitch count or something. He could be that Yusmeiro Petit type who gives you multiple innings out of the pen. I don't think you only want to use him in low leverage situations. We often think of that long relief role as like it's a blowout. And Junis has been good enough. He deserves to pitch in more of important innings than that. But they've got guys like Zach Littell who has options. That's pretty much it in the bullpen. I mean, John Brebbia and Tyler Rogers and Camilo Doval, but I don't really see them optioning any of those 3. So maybe Zach Littell goes down and Brebbia moves to the pen. I don't know. Like I said, these things often have a way of working themselves out. Maybe somebody else in the rotation has to go on the injured list. Maybe there's some kind of phantom injury with someone who's been ineffective, like Alex Wood. I don't know. I've said this before and I'll say it again. I do not know how they're going to work this out. But like I said a minute ago, it's kind of a good problem to have, having too many quality players. And I do not believe that Matthew Boyd can be optioned. So as soon as he's ready to come back, they have to add him to the roster. You're not allowed to just hold him down in the minor leagues when he's healthy and he's completed his rehab assignment. So that's the reality there. Perhaps they trade from a position of depth. That's another possibility. So anyway, that's my answer there. But yeah. So next question comes from Brian, who says, what are the top reasons they're losing the games they're losing? So I just wanted to say that I think this gets missed a lot. That people, for some reason, it's kind of like the Rockies in reverse. People always assume the Rockies are a good offensive team simply because they play at Coors Field. And so some of the numbers look good generally for the Rockies. Even if they're a bad offensive team, their offensive numbers are inflated by the environment in which they play. And I think it trains people to just be like, wow, they're a great offensive team, no matter what, even if they aren't. And that's been the case for years now. The Rockies are not a good offensive team, and yet we think of them that way. At least a lot of people do. But the Giants, we just are trained to think that they struggle offensively and that they're not a good offensive team. But that has not been the case this year. They are, last I checked, they've been second or third in runs per game all season long. And so the reason that they've lost the games that they've lost is pitching and defense. They simply haven't. The bullpen had like the worst ERA in baseball in the month of May. So, I mean, look no further than that, right? Like you're going to lose some games if you have the worst bullpen ERA in a month. You're going to have the fact that they went, 13-14 in May speaks to how well their offense generally did. The thing is, they've been inconsistent. They haven't just like been the most consistent offensive team in stretches of weeks versus also in stretches of games. They've gone completely dark in games. Sometimes they've had some great innings, but then just gone completely dark for the rest of the game. But yeah, they're third in baseball in runs per game, scoring over 5 runs per game. Only 3 teams in baseball, the Dodgers, Mets, and Giants, are over 5 runs per game. On the runs allowed per game side, the Giants are allowing 4.58 runs per game, which is 8th worst in Major League Baseball. Just by comparison, the Yankees are allowing 2.89 runs per game, almost 2 runs per game fewer. And the Dodgers are at 3.28, so like a run and a half less runs per game. And that's a big deal per game, a run and a half. And so that's the reason that it's runs allowed, whether it's the pitching, the starting pitching, the bullpen, the defense, they're allowing too many runs. And what's crazy, like you look at the Yankees, they've got this great record, and you look at some of the players they have, Judge, Stanton, Rizzo, Josh Donaldson, DJ LeMahieu, Gleyber Torres. And I think a lot of people would think, wow, that's a powerhouse offense. They're probably scoring a run per game more than the Giants, or at least half a run per game, or total on the season, they've scored probably 50 more runs. The Giants have outscored them by a significant margin. It's the runs allowed. It's absolutely the runs allowed that has made the difference. And so that's kind of the macro view. Obviously, if you go into each individual game, there are different things. They've just not been very clutch. And sometimes when they've had good scoring games, they've just had bad pitching. And there's also been bad luck. I think that there has been a significant amount of bad fortune on the pitching and defense side for the Giants in 2022. And that's why I'm actually pretty high on them moving forward, because I don't see luck in their hitting numbers, but I do see bad luck in their pitching and defense kind of numbers. And so I would expect that to improve in a big way in the next 2/3 of the season, and the offense to probably just keep chugging along. And I think defensively, there's no reason they should be one of the worst defensive teams in the game. I think with Belt coming back eventually and Longoria being out there, Crawford, Estrada, Yastrzemski, Slater, they should be able to be a solid defensive team like they were last year. It's pretty much the same group that they had last year when they were pretty good. So I just look for all of that to improve. So anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Now make your second listen the Locked On MLB podcast. MLB expert Paul Francis Sullivan brings humor, passion, and unique perspective on every team and the biggest stories around the league. Follow the #1 daily league-wide podcast, Locked On MLB, on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter, @Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please smash the thumbs up button, the 5-star button, whatever you can do. It helps me out a lot. So thank you in advance, and thank you to everyone who's done so already. Can't wait to be with you again tomorrow talking about tonight's game against the Rockies. Carlos Rodon, hopefully back on track, dominated them his last time he pitched against them. So thanks again for listening. Stay Locked On Giants.